We're live.
Good evening, everybody. Just gonna give another minute or so. I see people are still entering our webinar. Welcome on this Cinco de Mayo Eve. Thank you for taking some time on a rainy evening to join us. Thanks to the people that are gonna watch this later on. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. On this Cinco de Mayo Eve. Thank you for taking some time on a evening to join us. Thanks to the people that are going to watch this later on. I want to thank. Thanks for joining us.
I think someone has the YouTube on.
Okay.
I'm going to turn the YouTube audio down.
Okay. So I'll just carry on.
Yeah, Steve, hit the mute button on the YouTube stream. I think you have it open. Just hit the volume knob. It should go to mute.
Is that good now? Okay. All right. Yeah. Welcome to the technical difficulties of the remote world. Good evening again. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Steve D'Angelo. It has been my honor and pleasure to be the active and serving principal of the Remote Learning Academy. I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening on this rainy, dreary Cinco de Mayo for some really important conversations about a really important topic in the Smarter Balanced Assessment. I'd like to introduce the team that's joined us today. First is Leslie Davis. She's our elementary program facilitator of the RLA. She really, in a sense, is my right hand, and she's covered so many bases, and her technical piece will be really important tonight. Also joining us is Andrea Clark. She's the director of communications. I like to call her the communications goddess, but directors of communications is her official title. Also behind the scenes is Chris Brand, applications integration specialist in our IT department, and Marco Tatti, applications developer, also in our IT department. This team has worked really hard to kind of iron out some of the bumps in the road when it comes to SBA. It's been a lot of phone calls to the state, a lot of work behind the scenes to deliver this remotely for your children. We're very proud to being able to have the students participate in this remotely, and it's because of this team and others that we're able to do so. So thank you, team. You'll hear much more from Leslie in a little while, as she is, like I said, the technical wizard when it comes to delivery of the SBA remotely. With that said, I also want to thank you, parents, for your partnership in this process. We know it has not been easy. We appreciate the many emails that we received, phone calls that we received, because that helped us iron out the bumps in the road as we lead up to test day, which starts with the middle school on Monday. We've used many of the questions that you've posed and many of the problems that have been solved by this team to get where we are now and to have this presentation tonight. So if you have questions, that's fine. Feel free to enter them in the chat and YouTube. We will do our best to acknowledge them and answer them. If we don't get to answer them tonight, there will be an email shared at the end. It's our regular email where you were able to email us through this whole process. It's been shared several times, but it will be shared at the end of this presentation. So you could email questions then, and we'll answer them after the fact and get those answers to you. With that said, Leslie, would you like to present the slides so we can start talking about all the information that's up in front of us this evening? While Leslie's getting that ready, I want everyone to know that we're ready for this. We've done a lot of work, put in a lot of time. Your children have put in a lot of time practicing in their classes, making sure they're able to get on, working with their teachers and with our team to be able to log in through a secure browser. More on that in a little while. Our teachers have been trained. They've gotten their certificate to proctor this. We've ironed so many things out, and we're ready. We know that sometimes in this era with this testing process, it seems scary. We've had some kids mention, like, you know, is it all right to be a little nervous? Absolutely. It's a test. I've been nervous for every test I've ever taken my whole life. So nervous taking a test, wanting to do well, fine. Tears, stress, that's something that we don't want. So we're going to do our very best to make sure that this process does not end in any tears for your children, for the teachers, or for you parents. So with that said, Leslie, do you want to go to the next screen so we can talk about a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about tonight? So we have all kinds of things to talk about with test readiness, and then we'll give an overview of some of the things that are going to be expected of you as a guardian parent and your role in this whole testing situation, much of which is you've already have gone through and getting your kids ready to take the test on the secure browser, on their devices and whatnot. We'll talk a little bit about what it is to see for your student to sign in. We'll talk quickly about what the schedule is. You probably have heard from your classroom teachers, but if not, we'll share that tonight. We'll also talk about some problem solving and some troubleshooting. And lastly, any hanging questions and answers that might be still out there. Okay, and Leslie, feel free to jump in anytime that you wish, or anybody else on our team here. I don't like to read everything that's on a presentation always, but these are some really important things. These are the things that you should be thinking about the day of the test. So quiet workspace obviously is really important. You know, we do want kids to try their best in order to make it stress-free. If you make sure that the child's device is plugged in the night before and ready to go. That takes care of some of the nervous problems of not having a computer, and be ready on time. Make sure that steps have been taken, some of which have already been done, some of which you might have to do after this webinar, to make sure that they have the secure browser and access to the testing site. Make sure that that's done before the morning of the test, obviously. If you have headphones, that's great. It sets up a nice quiet spot for our children to be able to focus. Also, scratch paper and a pencil so they can work out problems is really a key. I think being on time to the testing sessions, like I said, you'll have those dates. I will share them with you. They're going to be shared in this presentation, and I'm sure the classroom teachers will be sharing them as well. Have them ready on time to enter the testing sessions. That'll take a lot of the pressure off. If you could support your children in the sign-in process, you know, this is age dependent, but if you can support them on getting into the tests, that is a key. Also, we're going to ask that you help support keeping the camera on. That comes directly from the state. It is non-negotiable. Your child's camera needs to stay on. Your child will have access to the teacher throughout the test. You'll hear more about that later. But they will be able to talk with their teacher, or chat with their teacher, or communicate with their teacher. And part of that process is leaving their screen on. And last but not least, always celebrate any level of success. Any time we finish a test session, feel free to high five your children, hug them, buy them ice cream sundaes, or whatever it might take. You know, because this is good work, but it's work, and they deserve some accolades when they do finish the test session. Leslie, anything that you'd like to jump in and share that I might have missed?
So I was just going to speak briefly about the CT Secure Browser, which I know has been a piece that we've been working with you all on, and I can't thank all of you enough. And the kids, I have to say that the problem-solving abilities of all of your children are quite remarkable. And they're now teaching each other where things are. They're making videos to share with each other. And I will say this remote piece, of course, is a learning process for all of us. And so we appreciate your patience in that. We've never done this way before. So as that information comes out, just keep that in mind. And so questions are, as Steve said, always welcome and quite helpful to us, quite frankly, because you might be seeing something that we're not necessarily seeing. And because we don't have every device that's out across the district or your home computers and things like that, every problem that we try to solve, we're sort of solving with kind of a blind eye. It's making a guess that it might be here, it might be there. So feel free to keep reaching out and asking the teachers as well as Reg Help and Steve and I if you have further questions on that. The other piece I wanted to talk about too is just the camera remaining on. The camera does have to stay on, as Steve said. It's state guidelines, and we are actually directed to stop the test for a student if their camera goes off. That being said, internet capabilities, just whatever your ability to push out the internet and to have that camera based on your internet in your house, your child's camera will come in and out, and we'll talk about that as we get a little further. That's different than a camera being turned off. So when we say that the cameras need to remain on, don't panic if the camera is off and the child is worried for several minutes possibly. It could be on the teacher's end, them pushing the test session out. It could be on the student's end. The piece that we're talking about here is that it is not optional. The camera has to remain on through the testing session so that you may not turn the camera off. But know that throughout the session, there may be periods in time where the child's camera comes on or comes off for a brief amount of time. And what will happen eventually is if there's no activity at all, the test will pause. The camera, however, should come in and out, and then the teacher would have to, if we don't see the children for a couple of minutes, they would have to pause the test. Anything else on that, Steve?
No, thank you for the clarity.
No problem.
Next slide. Okay, so some do's and some don'ts. Obviously, hard to take a remote test without a device, so we need a device and a good, strong internet connection. That's obviously a must. I mentioned a quiet space earlier. Any assistance that you could help your child in the logging in process would really be appreciated. And obviously, we keep away any distractions. That'll be helpful. Cell phones should not be anywhere within arm's reach of your children. Any dictionaries, any devices at all. Besides the pencil and paper. That's really all they really need around them. The knots, background music, TV. I think we should shy away from that. Obviously. Please don't help your child with any questions. I know it goes against your every fiber of being a parent to not help your child, and I completely understand that with daughters of my own, but please do not help them with any questions. Please don't read any part of the test to them as well, and please don't let anyone photograph, videotape, copy in any way. That goes for anyone in the house. That's obviously against the State Department of Education guidelines. So no copying or any pictures there. Anything else, Leslie?
No, I would just, I can't iterate enough how much the quiet testing space, how important that is. Because even though spaces might seem okay to us, the fact that there's absolutely not people walking through for them, that they're not distracted and they can do their best focusing. I mean, the kids actually talk about that a lot. That, well, it was hard to get their math done because, mom might have been cooking dinner in the background or something like that. So that's an incredibly important piece of this, because while we want the kids to know that whatever they do, their best on this is their best. And that is definitely all what we're asking from them. But this is an important, piece of information for us. We do use it to help us guide instruction for the following year, to look at students and the places that they're having success and the areas that we need to focus on for future instruction. So it's just incredibly important. And that also lends itself to that piece about helping them answer test questions. It is in our nature to just, give a student a word or, to help them through something, especially when we see them struggle. But we just need to know that in doing that, it will actually cause a bit of, for lack of a better word, it'll give us a misread on what your child's capable of, and that doesn't help them in the long run either. So the words that we really need to get used to saying is just try your best and keep going. And that's what we tell them in class. You know, sometimes it's a pat on the back if they're struggling and they ask, you know, can't you read this to me? Well, why can't you? Because it's something that we do in our household all the time, right? So that's going to be a shift for them. So I do think it's important just to have a phrase in your head and just reiterate that same phrase. Eventually they will stop, you know, appealing for help from you because they know what you're going to say. So if you continue just to say, you know, just keep working and do your best, just keep working and do your best, that's going to be your best bet for just trying to keep them on track and helping them through it. Because there will be problems that are challenging for them. And then there will be problems that seem incredibly easy for them. And that's kind of the nature of the test.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Leslie. I think life happens, right? So what the best we can do is minimize distractions, set them up for success. And when little bumps come, and they likely will, like Leslie mentioned, deep breath, you know, we'll reset and get through this. Okay, Leslie, next slide, please.
Would you like me to go ahead?
Yeah, you want to take over for the student
sure.
assignment? Thanks.
So the students have become incredibly adept at logging into the secure test or into the testing site. And the first piece, of course, is them to get into the secure browser. But once they're in there, and they will do that on their own, as they may have mentioned to you, and we'll talk a bit about that later. They'll be starting in a Google Classroom as they normally would, and then they will come out of the Google Classroom, and they're unable to have the Google Classroom open while they also have the CT secure browser, which is the way that we administer the test, open. So for security reasons, it won't allow you to open the Google Classroom or any other applications while you're in the CT secure browser. So that being said, when the students log out of their Google Classroom, they will then log into the CT secure browser, and they'll get a screen, and I'll show you those screens in a few minutes, that says that they wait to be admitted to the test, and then they're in. And when they get to this piece here, they're going to sign themselves in, and they've practiced this. They've got this down, and you've probably got a paper somewhere in their area where they're working that has their 10-digit student state ID. If they get confused, they're used to a lunch code that they use at school for everything, and they know those numbers, but this is a different code. It's been sent to all of the kids. I know that they have them. I've been in classrooms, they've been logging in with them, but I would make sure that it's written down like on a Post-it or a piece of paper near the computer so that when it's time to log in, it's just right there for them. So they'll need their first name, as it's listed as they're registered in school. So if they're JT, they can't go by JT, but they have to go by John. And they've all been practicing with that, so they know that. Their student ID, which is 10 digits from the state, and that's been given to them. And then the session ID will be generated by the teacher, and that will be shared in the Google Classroom and or via an email as well, so that you have that. We've been asking the students to just literally write down the session ID. They hold up the paper and show us that it's written down somewhere. Another important reason for them to have that scratch paper and pencil ready. They enter these 3 things, and then they hit sign in. There's several pages, as you're going to see, and I'm not going to go into detail on every page. A lot of it is incredibly self-explanatory, and the kids have been practicing each of these screens. But from there, you're going to walk through a series of pages. And starting with this one in the top left corner, it's going to ask if the student is actually who they are. They're going to choose the test that's offered to them. They will most likely have only one test offered, so it will make it as easy as possible. But rest assured, if they choose the wrong test on the teaching end, the teacher can see that, and she can stop that test. Not a big deal. They'll pop them out of that test, communicate with you, and have them log into the correct test if for some reason there was more than one test up. But our students will be entering a session with only one test most likely available to them. There'll be a camera check. They have to agree, obviously, to have the camera on, and that then they have to agree that they can see themselves. If you don't do the camera check, it won't allow you to move forward. So you can't just say, I know that my camera's working, and click those boxes. You actually have to go through it. They'll get a microphone check, same thing. You have to test the microphone. If you don't test the microphone, you can't click I heard my recording. So just know that you have to do each of those things to move forward. Then they'll get an audio playback check in that top left corner. And then they're going to see a sign that says waiting for approval. And this is where they sort of start to panic, because a teacher all the kids are signing into the session, and it could be several minutes before they get approved to come in, but there's nothing you can do here. That blue bar across the top will stream, and it'll stream across while we wait for this teacher to allow the student into the session. Sometimes they may be problem solving or something else, so have no fear. If you're just waiting for a few minutes, that's okay. Then you'll pop up this instruction and help screen. that'll have test settings, additional test information, and the help guide. You do not need to go through these things. They've been gone through with the students up until now. Their test settings are set for them already. The additional test information we've gone over with them. The help guide is there if for some reason something came up, but quite frankly, we prefer that you just reach out and ask questions before then. And then it'll ask you to review the test settings. There's nothing that you need to do on this page. This will all be set for your student already. And then they'll click OK. The help guide will pop up again. And they will click that next button at the bottom of the page, and then they'll get instructions and help one more time. And then at the bottom of that page, you'll see begin test now. So there will be, once they're entered into, when they're waiting for that approval, there will be several screens you'll go through, and then they'll begin the test when they're ready. The teacher won't say to them again, okay, you can start now, or walk them through this. In the Google Classroom, the teacher will go over all the directions. They'll remind them of how to answer questions. They'll remind them of how to communicate with them. They'll remind them of what to do if, they get knocked out of the test. All of that will happen before they get to this login place, because until they get into the test, they can't communicate with the teacher. So through all of these slides, that's where we really need your help the most, because you're just going to help them log in and go through. Like I said, they've been practicing and they are superstars, but if you can be available during this time, it'll be incredibly important.
Listen, I just want to reiterate too that they will be practicing more before the actual test as well. So they've practiced this, they've seen it. It looks like a lot of steps, but they're getting pretty used to kind of just following through.
Yep. And in addition to that, I know that for some of our students, they're picking up Commute Computers tomorrow, which will be incredibly important. And this piece, they've been practicing regardless of whether or not they had a computer and could get into the web browser. They've been practicing this in other ways for several weeks. So this piece won't be new. It'll just be logging into that web browser tomorrow when they get their computer. And most of our teachers have a practice test scheduled for Friday, specifically because we hope to have as many computers in hand as we can. So if at all possible, and we totally understand if you can't get there tomorrow, but if you're able to get there tomorrow to get the computer, if you had your teacher communicated with you that there's one available for you, then they'd be ready to do that practice test on Monday, or I'm sorry, on Friday. For elementary students, there's always the possibility to do that on Monday as well. And there's very few of our middle school students who actually haven't done this and gone through the web browser and done everything. So they'll be ready to go for Monday for sure. You want to go ahead, Steve?
Yes, thank you, Leslie. So these are the testing dates. I will send them, so you'll have a copy in your inbox. Elementary starts a day after the middle school. You'll see the middle school basically starts next Monday. We'll test English language arts on Monday, and they'll be finished by Wednesday. The elementary students don't start until Tuesday the 11th, and they'll do 2 sessions on the 11th for the ELA. Math piece, the elementary students will take on Thursday, May 13th, and then they'll finish up with the performance task on Tuesday, May 18th for math. The middle school will also test the week of May 17th and wrap up by May 20th.
And just so on this piece in the elementary school, we'll be doing 2 sessions. So those days will primarily be, these 3 dates will be primarily testing. There'll be the Google Meet in the morning to have the morning meeting and get ready to test. Then we'd like them to take a nice big long lunch break, get outside if they can, run around a bunch, come back in for the afternoon session. But there will not be classes scheduled that day for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Our goal is to really have them focus on just participating in the test and getting through that piece. They won't be having their other normal academics those days. The other piece is we've scheduled 2 sessions for each part of this. So in the elementary piece, there's the language arts, as Steve said, and the 2 math pieces. 2 sessions tends to be about enough time for most of our students. However, you need to know the tests are not timed. So if students take 3, 4, 5 days, that's fine. We'll be having makeup sessions and small groups for students that need to finish up. There is absolutely no rush at all. You don't need to panic if your student's only on question 5 after the end of that first session. Students are going to work at their own pace. Our 3rd and 4th graders have never seen the test before. It's a different format, besides the practice test. They've never been in this situation before, especially testing at home remotely. It may take them a little bit longer. That's okay. we have plans to make that up, and we will reach out to you to schedule those makeups. At no point should any student or parent be panicking if they are not complete in 2 sessions. That is absolutely normal. And in the school buildings, it usually takes us for a large handful of kids, you know, sometimes 3 and 4 sessions.
I want to make one comment about middle school testing. Those tests will be taken in those specific classes during those specific class times. So your child will take the ELA part in their language arts class, the math part in their math class. It's within that math, it's within that time period. The elementary test will be taking place during a specific time that will be shared by your classroom teachers. But the middle school students will take them in their actual assigned class times.
Go ahead, Steve, on this one. Can you take a break? On our technology tips. So quite frankly, as I mentioned to you, this is the first time, I don't know that any district has taken remote testing on like this before, and we're all in this, you know, new world, figuring this out as we go. But here we wanted to try to pull together a few tips for you. Of course, this won't cover every problem that we encounter in the next week or so. We imagine that there'll be some things that come up that'll be brand new to us that we haven't seen yet. And fortunately, we have this amazing team of people who are helping answer questions and get us, you know, helping us sort of troubleshoot. So reach out if there's something that isn't on here and it comes up for sure. But a couple of things that could definitely help. If you're having some bandwidth issues and things are slow and the camera's not showing on the child's computer regularly, you can move move closer to the router. If you have an Ethernet cable in the house, which is that blue, well, some of them are blue. Chris is on this call, so he can be a little more technical than I am, but it looks like the old school phone cords that you would pop into your computer and you would connect directly to the router. That will absolutely increase the connectivity so when your student's testing. If you don't have a problem, you don't have to worry about it. This is not something anyone has to do. These are just things that if you were looking to sort of improve and you've seen a lag or there was an issue. Disconnect other devices connected to the internet while the testing is completed if possible. We know you have people who are working and that has to continue. We know that there's other kids that are in class. That's just life and that's going to happen. So, but if there's other things that are up and running that can be shut down, if you're having a bandwidth problem and things seem to be slow, that's something you can do as well. When you have a trouble getting in, you can't find the secure browser, or something's not showing up, or you've gotten an error message. You know, it's that old school idea of just shutting down the computer and completely starting again. And we've been laughing a bunch this week because we've all tried different scenarios where we've shut things down and brought them back up. And on different occasions, we've gotten different scenarios when we open up that computer again. So please, 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 if you have your child trying to get in and it's not working, don't panic. Just have them shut that down, that computer, and start it again and see if you can get to that web browser and then move on with logging in. Again, entering that student ID and test session code, you know, I can't tell you, kids are so convinced they've done it correctly. I'm always convinced I've done it correctly, but we all know if you can take it all out and put it back in again, sometimes we'll correct it. A big one for our youngest students is that 0 versus the O in the test session codes. You would think they would just take that out of the test sessions and realize that that's a problem. Their student IDs might be 1 number off, especially if they have several zeros in it. Sometimes they put 3 instead of 2. And then if the student has any questions during the test, they may use the raise hand icon, which they all are familiar with, the chat feature, share their screens, or use a video conference for teacher assistance. And they've all been practicing these things. There is a link here, and we'll be sharing this slideshow with you probably tomorrow morning, first thing. And this link will take you in, and it's in the guide for students and families. And rather than read it all to you, but if you had any concerns or you want to have that handy so that during the test you can pull it up, if that makes you feel better, you can absolutely do that. I will say though, the kids have been practicing and they are spot on with using these features. If for some reason a feature didn't work, I will say that the text box is the easiest way to communicate with the teacher. The video gets a little tricky. They like to do it, but sticking with, you know, the basic pieces, the best idea. If none of these troubleshooting tips, of course, work and your problems persist, you can log back into Google Classroom, and the teachers will still have Google Classroom open. So you may need to wait a minute because they'll be administering the test, obviously, to everyone else. But if you wait there, they will pop back in and then give you further direction on what we should do next if none of this is working.
Listen, I just want to reiterate that students can't have any other applications or any other windows open. If they do, the test session will not work. Teachers, though, can and will have their Google Classrooms open. So in the middle of a test, if a student's kicked off and can't get back in, they will have access to the teacher through Google Classroom on top of the other communication pieces that are within the test if they are still on the test.
Yes, and then that being said, the only way they will be able to access the test is through the CT Secure browser. Like if you go into the Connecticut State portal, which I know we've shared with you and is on our page, on the district page, there is no other way to get into the test except through the CT Secure browser. So that's a must.
I just wanted to reiterate, kind of dovetail on what Leslie said. In the perfect scenarios, even when we're not in remote sessions, there's always been some sort of testing issues. We've got students testing across the state, all taking the same test. So even in a perfect world, in the school, there's problems. So don't be afraid, if something does happen, because invariably there will, so don't be afraid there. Also, on the lockdown browser, it truly, when they say it's a lockdown browser, as everyone said, it's locking you out from doing other things. And it's really, I don't want to say it's bad for the computer, but it shuts everything else out. So by its nature, the best thing to do is shut everything down, not just log out and restart the computer, because of how invasive that browser is and how it touches many, it literally turns off features. So there's no cheating or they can't use other resources in the computer. So rebooting is very key. I just want to say too that on a PC versus a Chromebook, the experiences are just a little bit different. So when you do leave that Google Classroom on a PC, you can launch the lockdown browser right from there. On the Chromebook, you're actually logging out of the Chromebook and launching the browser from the login page of the Chromebook. So you have you don't have a little bit of a different transition on the Chromebooks, and that's just, again, it just adds a little bit of your time that it takes to get to the test, and then maybe get back into the support or the Google Classroom if you do need support. That's all I've got now, and I'll definitely jump in if there's more.
Thank you, Chris. That's so helpful. Steve, do you want to go ahead? I mean,
I'll take over here. So I think this is a really important resource. Andrea Clark has put together this SBA testing family resource webpage. It's right off our district webpage on the district website. It's got a variety of tutorial videos, letters, all kinds of tips and do's and don'ts for this whole process. So if you haven't visited that webpage, I highly suggest that you do, and that you keep that as a resource throughout the testing process. Of course, the next slide is going to be Leslie and my information. You can reach out to us anytime. Reg Help goes right to this team and a team of others, and they've been wonderful, like I mentioned earlier, through this whole process. They're really handling the technical pieces, and we're kind of handling the test process pieces. So together, we make a pretty good team, and we're prepared to help your child and you be successful in this process. But I don't think any of us could be successful in this remote world without communication. So if you're having issues, if you're frustrated, stressed, reach out to us. If we don't have the answer, we'll pass it on to Chris and the IT team. But deep breath. Together, we'll handle this. And I think in the end, we're going to get our kids tested on the SBA. It's going to be some really important data, something that's going to need to be called over and deserves to be called over. And just want to really thank you, the families, for for partnering in this whole process. It really does take a village to raise children, and this pandemic and the last year and a half and the success of the Remote Learning Academy, I think it just as a tip of the hat to that village, and Fairfield is a really great village, as you know. So with that, I don't know if there's any questions, or Chris or Andrew.
I was just saying on the Reg Help side. So just you're aware, we can only work on computers that are owned by Fairfield Public Schools. Unfortunately, we can't work on a personal device. So if you have a personal PC or a personal Mac, we'll be unable to kind of help you. We can direct you to the state resources. And there are so many different variables that are in this, in the sense that when we don't know about your home network, or we don't know about your individual situation. So it's hard for us to respond specifically to personal device questions. Now, that being said, for the PCs that the district may have provided to you, we have the ability to remote into those, and we can, and you may, some of those people we might have already seen that as we installed the browser. So there is some troubleshooting that we can do there. As with the Chromebooks, which we do like very much in that, because they're very bulletproof in the sense that there's not too much that we can do there, but they just do kind of work. So if you have, at Reg Help, if you do experience a problem with your school device, the sooner that you can let us know, the sooner that we can rectify that. So, and if it's a question, we'll try and answer it the best we can if it's a personal device. But if it's a school device, the sooner that you can kind of alert us, like, that you're not seeing the icon on the PC, or you don't think it's you don't see it in the app section of the Chromebook, that kind of thing, the sooner the better. And we can definitely, because again, we do expect it to be on all of these devices, but maybe we missed one, or maybe there's something, and we would definitely can investigate that well ahead of time. And if there's something where you run through the testing and your camera isn't working, or it's not picking up the mic, and we need to arrange a swap of a device, or the screen breaks, or the dog bites the keyboard off, we can definitely arrange that. But again, the sooner the better would be helpful to all of us.
Chris, can you let everybody know what information, when they email Reg Help, we would want them to include, so we can save the step of having to reach back out to them and ask for more information? Do they need to include the
Great question. The two things that we always need, and it's so great because people put email in saying, I've got a problem, blah blah blah, but they don't tell me the student name, or maybe their student ID or their school. That would be helpful. So definitely the student name, if you know the student ID, or their student login username. So it would be, in my case, it's cbrand@fairfieldschools.org. It might be your child's first initial and last name, and maybe a number 1 or 2 or 3 afterwards @fairfieldschools.net. That would be very helpful, because that just saves us time, looking up, trying to match a parent with a child, and that takes just a little time in that.
Leslie, would you go back to our contact page? I just wanted to say that Leslie and I will be together and in person in the school the day of testing, kind of like a testing central. We'll be joined by some teachers that connections weren't up to par, so they're joining us in school as well to take advantage of the Wi-Fi. But the reason I wanted to go back to this slide is that is my district issued cell phone, 650-2168. That's like a hotline the day of the test. Reach out to us. Leslie and I will be together. There'll be representation from the IT department there as well. So if all else fails, give us a call and we'll see what we can do to help you out the day of the test. Fingers crossed that the phone doesn't ring too much, but we'll be there if you need us. Andrea, did you see any questions to come by that we might be able to answer with some of the time we have remaining?
We actually do not have any questions coming up in the chat.
That's because Leslie and Chris did such a great job with answering all the questions.
I think you're right about that, Steve.
Well, I want to reiterate that Leslie and I answer or look at our emails probably way more than we should. But reach out if you have any questions, any concerns. We're there. We have a few more days to prepare. We've already ironed out great mountains of things in our road to success in SBA, and we'll continue to iron those things out. And we're looking forward to starting our testing next week. So thank you all for your time. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Thank you, team. Have a great night.